repair, redistribution or reassortment, repopulation. The three that we discussed yesterday. In repair, we discussed about lethal damage, sublethal damage, and potentially lethal damage. To remember that lethal damage is the damage to kill, potentially lethal damage, if not done something about it, then it will kill. Sublethal damage by itself, it won't kill. If you add further damage, it will kill. To remember it easily, lethal damage, you're stabbing someone in the carotids. Potentially lethal, you stab someone. If not taken to the hospital, the person will die. Sublethal, one stab is not enough. You have to stab multiple times to kill. And this repair is essential for normal tissues in order to minimize side effects. And this repair capacity is less in tumor. Other and this has a negative impact on tumor control. Redistribution. Redistribution has an means it is like the cells are moving towards the sensitive phases of the cell cycle with passage of time, so that the ones which were today in the radio resistant phase of the cell cycle, tomorrow they will be in radio sensitive phase. So this is again beneficial for tumor control. Repopulation, again it has a relation with repair and responsible for healing and minimizing side effects, but at the same time it is responsible for negative impact on tumor control. But from the point of view of repopulation and repair, repair is more important and more detrimental when it comes to tumor control. So now moving ahead, any doubts for yesterday? Yeah. So now we'll start with reoxygenation. Any doubts? I presume no doubts. And the oxygen effect was observed as early as 1912 in Germany by Schwartz, who noted that the skin reaction produced on his forearm by a radium applicator was reduced if the applicator was pressed hard onto the skin. By 1921, it had been noted by Holthausen that Ascaris eggs were relatively resistant to radiation in the absence of oxygen. In England in 1930s, Mottram explored the question of oxygen in detail. So for sparsely ionizing radiation, approximately two-thirds of the damage produced is mediated by free radicals, which may be fixed by oxygen. So by fixing, it means that oxygen acts like a glue, so that when the radicals, the free radicals come from the cytoplasm towards the nucleus, towards the DNA, this oxygen sees to it that the free radicals generated are causing that damage and are not being wasted. And this is the reason why in hypoxia, hypoxic cells are radio resistant. Oxygen enhancement ratio, very important to concept, and this concept we will be again studying when we will discuss the topic of LET, RBE and OER. The ratio of hypoxic to aerated doses needed to achieve the same biological effect is called as oxygen enhancement ratio, which roughly ranges between 2 to 3 for hypoxic cells. The same is being shown here. Oxygen enhancement ratio depends upon the type of radiation. All these figures are from Hall. So if you see in X-rays, it is 2.5. In high LETs, it is OER is 1. Can anyone tell me why OER is 1 in alpha rays? In high LET radiation, why OER is 1? Why it doesn't depend on oxygen? Yes, the answer is directly ionization. Since the radiation or the particles, they directly ionize and they cause direct DNA damage. Because of direct ionization, oxygen is not required for fixing any damages. And that is the reason, be it hypoxia, be it anoxia, be it oxia, it doesn't matter and it will cause its effect. And this is the reason why it is 1. K value of oxygen. Okay, a sensitivity midway between a fully hypoxic and fully aerobic radio response is achieved at an oxygen tension of about 3 mm of mercury, corresponding to about 0.5% oxygen, more than a factor of 10 lower than partial pressures of oxygen usually encountered in normal tissues. This value of 0.5% has been named oxygen's K value and is obtained from an oxygen K curve of relative radiosensitivity plotted as a function of oxygen tension. So what this plot says is, can anyone explain this plot? This plot can be kept in your exam and you will be asked to explain. Can someone unmute and explain? Come on, guys. Guys, someone, come on. Okay, anyways, I will only do it. See, this is a plot of oxygen tension on the x-axis with the radio sensitivity on the y-axis. So it says that as the oxygen tension increases, the radio sensitivity increases. So the point at which the radio sensitivity is 50%, okay, between fully aerobic versus fully anoxic is that is the K value. So K value of oxygen is nothing but the point at which it is 50% radio sensitive, and that is achieved at 0.5% oxygen or per 3 mm of mercury pressure. Okay, at 3 mm of mercury pressure, it is 50% sensitive. Okay. So now coming to the terms chronic hypoxia. Chronic hypoxia results from limited diffusion distance of oxygen through tissue that is respiring. The distance to which oxygen can diffuse is largely limited by the rapidly. What is its significance? In our clinical situations, there is not much significance of that. One sec, sorry. The K value significance for us, it is not much. Only it is that from the radiobiological and experimental point of view, it has importance. For us, it is important to know that the normal tissues, in which the range we have, the 50% sensitivity is less than that. Okay, from clinical implications, it does not have much significance. So the distance to which oxygen can diffuse is largely limited by the rapidity rate at which it is metabolized by respiring tumor cells. First detailed work was done by Tomlinson and Gray on bronchial carcinoma. The obvious conclusion was that tumor cells could proliferate and grow actively only if they were close to a supply of oxygen or nutrients from the stroma. They calculated the distance to be 150 micrometer. Okay, I have a question here. Why we worry about hypoxic cells and why we do not worry about anoxic cells? Means why we have to worry about hypoxia? Why we are not worrying about anoxia? Because anoxia means no oxygen and hypoxia is less oxygen. Even anoxic cells are radio resistant, right? I'll ask the question here. Why hypoxic cells have more significance than anoxic cells, despite anoxic cells being more radio resistant? So even here, if you see, the hypoxic cells are there and the black anoxic cells are there. Our worry is always hypoxic cells and not anoxic, or is it like our worry is both? Why? Yes, you're right. Anoxic cells are mostly dead cells, and if not dead, they will die for sure. Whereas hypoxic cells are the ones, they remain viable, but at a level kind of they go into hibernation. They reduce their metabolism, they reduce their requirements, so they kind of go into sleep. So whenever at the next opportunity, when they get their blood supply, they get their oxygen, they become active again. So it is this range of cells that are responsible for treatment failures, and that is why they are more worrisome. Okay. Okay. Now in this figure, if you see the tumor, as the tumor progresses, the area of necrosis increases. Okay. The thickness of the tumor, if you see, remains the same. Here again the tumor enlarges. The area of necrosis increases, but this rim size remains the same. This is the theory based on that oxygen diffusion distance. That is, the number of viable cells usually remain the same around 30 to 40%, and rest all it is necrosis. And this is the reason why in biopsies you have to take it from the margin or periphery and not the center. Okay. I hope you all know this, that when you are taking a biopsy, it should always be from the periphery and not from the center, and it should why multiple biopsies are taken. Multiple biopsies are taken because so that you if you take one biopsy and if it comes from the necrotic area, then you will not be sure that whether it is malignant or not. To account for that, it is important that you take multiple areas so that to demonstrate tumor cells. Acute hypoxia is the result of temporary closing of tumor blood vessel owing to malformed vasculature of the tumor, which lacks smooth muscle and often has an incomplete endothelial lining and basement membrane. Postulated in the early 1980s by Martin Brown, acute hypoxia results from transient fluctuations in the blood flow due to malformed vasculature. See, chronic hypoxia is diffusion distance, about a distance of 100 to 180 micrometer. Okay, whereas acute hypoxia is like temporary closure of supply. When this happens, it is like one area closes, the other area begins, opens up. So acute hypoxia is usually not a problem. Okay, it is the chronic that is a problem, because in acute, if one closes, the other opens up. So somehow it is managed. Okay. Biphasic response of tumors. Parr and Tolmach with solid subcut lymphosarcoma, initial slope of D0. What is D0? What is D0? You are right and you are wrong. No, Sushmita, that's D10. Yeah. Surviving fraction to 37%, not survival fraction of 37%. There's a difference. The dose required to reduce the surviving fraction to 37%. Why 37%? Anybody has an idea? If not, we will discuss any which ways in cell survival curves. Why this 37% कहाँ से आया? Okay, let us discuss about this in detail in cell survival curves. So D0 is 1.1 gray initially. Okay, but the final slope is 2.6 gray. Can anyone tell why? Means at lower doses, the slope is D0 is less, and when at higher doses, the slope. We'll discuss about this. That 37% will discuss in cell survival curves because it will take more time for discussion. Now, tell me the answer of this one. Why initially or at lower doses the slope is D0 is 1.1, at high doses it is 2.6. So lower doses is more radiosensitive or higher doses is more radiosensitive? And why this has happened? No, because SLD repair will happen at every dose. See, shall I explain or anyone has to attempt? Yes, very good. This is one of the reasons, reassortment, and the other is reoxygenation. What happens that at low doses, only the radiosensitive cells are killed. Okay, the ones surviving are more radio resistant. Okay, oxygenated cells will be killed. The ones in the radiosensitive phases of the cell cycle are killed. Okay, and that is why the initial slope is 1.1 gray. But as the dose increases, all the oxygenated cells are gone. Only the hypoxic and oxic cells are remaining. So these cells are left. So in order to kill them, you need a further higher dose. Like here, 1.1 gray is required to reduce the fraction to 37%. But at higher doses, 2.6 gray is required to reduce to 37%. Because there is differential killing. Okay, like in the game of chess, initially the pawns are only dying. In order to kill the rook, the knight, the bishop, you have to strategize, you have to think more, you have to take an extra effort, something like that. Okay, initially radiosensitive cells are dying, then you have to add more dose to kill the radio resistant ones. Understood? I hope so. Let's move ahead. So reoxygenation is the phenomenon by which hypoxic cells become oxygenated after a dose of radiation. Is termed as reoxygenation. The oxygen status of cells in a tumor is not static. It is dynamic and constantly changing. Basis of using fractionated radiotherapy, which overcomes the problem of hypoxia. Mechanisms and timescales of tumor reoxygenation. I'm not saying there is no role of SLD. SLD has its role, it is there. Sublethal damage repair is happening. Okay, but irrespective of the doses, the sublethal damage keeps on happening. It is just that the reoxygenation and reassortment are contributing to radiosensitivity. SLD is contributing towards repair. Okay, mechanisms and timescales of tumor reoxygenation. Recirculation through temporary closed vessels happens in minutes. Reduced respiration rate in damaged cells, minutes to hours. Ischemic death of cells without replacement, hours. Mitotic death of irradiated cells, hours. Cord shrinkage as dead cells are resorbed in days. Okay, no. See, yeah, this is some. See, this is that example. Now, this is 15% hypoxic cells. All are aerated cells. Now, given radiation, aerated cells, all aerated cells gone. Only hypoxic cells are remaining. Now, this is there. Now, blood supply to hai. So, because of that blood supply, some cells are getting aerated again. See, again. So, reoxygenation is happening, and these cells are becoming radiosensitive. Okay. So the proportion, and that's how reoxygenation improves radiosensitivity. Okay. So now coming to the final R, radiosensitivity. Robert Kainbach first reported the higher radiosensitivity of cells with high mitotic activity in 1901. Different cells and tissues exhibit different radiosensitivity even though irradiated under certain standard conditions. Mutations of genes may also lead to altered radiosensitivity. Example, ataxia-telangiectasia, Bloom syndrome, where D0 is 0.5 gray as compared to most other culture cells having a D0 of 2 gray. More or less determined influence by the 4Rs. Based on the pioneering work of Bergoni and Tribondu, Rubin and Caceret's classification system for tissue radiosensitivity consists of 4 main categories. Type 1 vegetative intermitotic cells, most radiosensitive. This is one of your short question. The types of different tissues. Type 1 is vegetative intermitotic cells, most radiosensitive, regularly dividing undifferentiated stem cells. Example, bone marrow, intestinal crypts, basal layer of epidermis of the skin. Type 2, differentiating intermitotic cells, somewhat less radiosensitive, consists of transitional cells that are the process of developing differentiated characteristics, yet are still capable of a limited number of divisions. Myelocytes of the bone marrow and spermatocytes of the testis. Type 3 or revertic postmitotic cells. Relatively radioresistant, consists of those few types of cells that are fully differentiated and do not divide regularly, yet under certain conditions can revert to a stem cell like state and divide as needed. Example, hepatocytes and lymphocytes. Type 4 or fixed postmitotic cells, most radioresistant, terminally differentiated, irreversible postmitotic cells characteristic of most normal tissue parenchyma. Should such cells be killed by radiation, they cannot be replaced. Most normal tissue parenchyma such as neurons and muscle cells. This type of cells are responsible for permanent damage or irreversible reactions. Deacon et al. 5 groups of tumors based on SF2 ascending order. Lymphoma, myeloma, it is radiosensitivity basically. Lymphoma, myelomas, neuroblastomas, medullos, small cell lung, breast, bladder, cervix, pancreas, colorectal, squamous cell lung, melanoma, osteosarcoma, GBMs, renal cell carcinomas. Okay, I'm rushing into this because these are pretty straightforward things. Modifiers of radiosensitivity. Radiosensitizers are defined as chemical or pharmacological agents that increase the cytotoxicity of ionizing radiation. True radiosensitizers meet the strict criteria of being relatively non-toxic in and of themselves, acting only as potentiators of radiation toxicity. Apparent radiosensitizers' net effect of making the tumor radiosensitive might not be non-toxic when given alone. This is another important question. Can radiosensitivity modifiers can be asked in radiobio as well as in clinical onco. Broadly classified into three groups: hypoxic cell radiosensitizers, proliferating cell radiosensitizers, bioreductive drugs. Okay. Answer, just let me see. Yeah, that's it. Because one sec. These are the different chemical modifiers of radiation therapy. Uh, um, I'm not going to go into detail of this here. I just want to make a point. See, it is a proof of principle that in sparsely ionizing radiations, when free radicals are formed, they are causing DNA damages. So if you're using scavengers like the other day, sulfhydryl groups, or the once they scavenge the free radicals, they should be protecting the from radiation, and they should be helping in minimizing the side effects. But the issue is with the local control, because if they're going into the normal tissues, there is a chance that they are going into the tumor cells as well, and that is why whether it is advisable or not. And one is this: the only FDA approved is amifostine for as a radioprotective agent. My question for you all will be whether amifostine should be used or not, or what are the logistics problems with amifostine. Okay, so we end here today. Next week we will start with LET, RBE, OER, and after that we will do cell survival curves. Okay, and then if there are any other topics you request in radio bio or any other thing, I will be happy to take them. Okay, any doubts? Sure. Statistics, sure, we'll take them. Okay, so I'll tell you the how I need LET, RB, and OER need 2 sessions. Cell survival curves, I may need more than 2 to 3 sessions. Then what else is remaining? And stats, I need at least 2 to 3 sessions. Okay, thank you, and bye.